In the winter of 1861, 3 men in New Orleans began work on a submarine. They completed their first attempt, the CSS Pioneer, but before it could be put to military use, Farragut's Union fleet arrived, and the Pioneer was scuttled when New Orleans was captured. The inventors left for Mobile, Alabama, and built what was called the American Diver. When the American Diver was put out on a trial run, it was found that it moved slower than expected. Finally, that boat sank during a trial, with the crew barely making it out with their lives. The partners decided not to try to salvage the wreck, but instead start anew. The new boat would be larger and would include improvements over the Pioneer and the American Diver. The fish boat, as it was called at first, was 40 feet long and was powered by a crew of 8, all but one of whom were to turn the propeller that would drive the boat forward. At the front, the boat's captain ran the levers that steered and raised and lowered the boat. The space was very tight for the crew. They had to squeeze down 2 small hatches and then remain hunched over on a bench in the dark, turning the crank to drive the boat forward. To dive, the crew member would simply open a valve to let the water fill the tanks. To surface, they pumped the water out. One design problem that would prove fatal is that the tanks were not sealed off from the rest of the ship. If the valves were not closed, the boat would fill with water, killing all inside. For air, the crew only had what was inside the boat when they dove. They could remain under for about half an hour. When the boat was completed, they decided to send it to Charleston, where Beauregard thought it might be what was needed to defend the harbor and break the blockade. The fish boat reached Charleston on August 12, 1863. A crew was selected, but the new crew were not familiar with the controls of the boat and soon had an accident. With the submarine rushing to the bottom, the crew struggled to get out. 5 of the crew were drowned. The boat was salvaged and Horace Hunley was given the command. With an experienced crew, he practiced diving under the boats in the harbor. But on one occasion, the boat dived and never resurfaced. Hunley had probably forgotten to close the valves and was unable to open the hatches because of the water pressure, so the entire crew drowned. The boat was again recovered, and George Dixon, a member of the crew who happened to be absent when it sunk, was appointed her commander. After many days of waiting, they went to attack on the night of February 17, 1864. They had selected as their target the USS Housatonic, a 12-gun wooden steamer. It was 5 miles off the coast, and took the crew of the Hunley much effort to get there. At around 8:45, they approached the Housatonic, and the officer on watch sighted what looked like a ripple in the water about 100 yards out. But looking again, he saw an object moving very fast toward the ship. The ship went into an uproar, and they tried to move forward to escape what they assumed was another attack of the David. They fired at the Hunley with anything they could lay their hands on, trying to turn her back. The Hunley dove and attached its torpedo to an area that happened to be just near the magazine. Seconds later, there was a huge explosion, throwing smoke, water, and debris high into the air. A huge hole was ripped in the side of the Housatonic. It sunk in less than 5 minutes, and the survivors were picked up by the boats from the other ships. 5 men had been killed, and the rest survived. The Housatonic was the first ship in military history to be sunk by a submarine, but the Hunley never returned to port. Her absence was not noticed for 2 days, and it was decided that she probably sunk. Its demise remains one of the most famous mysteries in American history. After many years of speculation, it was finally located in the late 20th century, lying under 3 feet of mud, and in 2000 the wreck was brought to the surface and investigated by archaeologists. Inside were found the bones of the crew and many artifacts that they carried with them. One really amazing artifact found was a gold coin carried by George Dixon. The $20 piece had been carried by him in the Battle of Shiloh, and had saved his life when a bullet hit the coin instead of going through his body. He carried it on the boat, thinking that it brought him good luck. The ongoing work on the Hunley has answered some questions regarding the boat's fate. None of the men had left the ship. They were 1,000 feet away from the wreck. There was no structural damage from the explosion, but recent archaeological evidence has shown that the torpedo was still attached, putting the Hunley within 20 feet of the explosion. But many questions still remain. Why did they sink? Did they intentionally dive to wait for the incoming tide? Or for some reason were they not able to surface? Or did the Hunley sink immediately and the wreck gradually moved the 1,000 feet? Whatever the Hunley's fate, it was unique. Safe and usable submarines were far in the future, and the next successful military use occurred in 1914 during World War I. With the Hunley sinking, the war was almost over for Charleston. New weapons had been developed and used successfully, but none were successful enough to break the blockade and turn the war around. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and share it with your friends. You can also visit www.discerninghistory.com for more videos and other resources.